Today we continue our red letter readings, which are these words of Jesus. And this week we're looking at the theme of predictions. And our passage today is Luke 19:28 to 43, which is this really exciting passage, well-known passage of the triumphant entry into Jerusalem. And I wanted to pick out three of Jesus' words, three of Jesus' sayings in this passage, which really jumped out to me. Firstly, it comes at the beginning, just as Jesus sends his disciples before him into the town to find what he needs. And Jesus says at the end of that section there in verse 31, if anyone asks you why you're untying it, which is the colt, that you would say that the Lord needs it. And the Lord needs it in terms of when Jesus says that. For me, it's showing how what Jesus needs it for. And these words of prediction that he kind of says predicts, what's going to happen to the disciples as they go into this town. These words of predictions, and what he needs it for is really to fulfill older, much more ancient words of predictions that came hundreds of years before from Zechariah 9:9. We hear the prophet saying, "Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout aloud, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king is coming to you. Righteous and having salvation is he, humble and mounted on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey." And so Jesus fulfills these words of predictions that came hundreds of years ago. And in that fulfillment, we have this wonderful scene which again fulfills these words, that there's rejoicing, that there's great hope and expectation. The disciples are overwhelmed by this excitement. I guess they throw their cloaks onto the ground as they come through the town, and other people come in and join in, and this throwing down of the cloaks on the ground as the person rides past. This is a sign of homage to a ruler. They're saying that this is our ruler, this is our king. We've seen what he can do. This Jesus is our king, and there's a tension here that then the Pharisees or the people who are watching this, they say to Jesus that you need to rebuke your disciples because you're going to get in trouble. And this is brings me to the second word that Jesus speaks in this passage here, that his reply to the Pharisees when they ask him to rebuke his disciples. In verse 40, I tell you, he replies, if they keep quiet, the stones will cry out. And for me, when I read that reply from Jesus, it reminds me and it shows me that actually there is something far greater that's happening in this kind of like scene and in this time. Actually, it's not just people, but the whole of creation is tied up with who Jesus is. In fact, the whole of creation, it will be crying out, is crying out. And when we read in Romans how the whole of creation is groaning for its Messiah, this is what's happening here. That as Jesus enters into Jerusalem, as he comes into Jerusalem on his donkey, fulfilling the prophecy of that has come before, the prediction that had come before, Jesus is fulfilling things that are far more important, having cosmic kind of like impact in all things that are happening in the world. And these are things which are beyond what the Pharisees understood. And the reality and the truth is that actually they are far beyond the reality and understanding of his disciples. In their joy and in their excitement, they didn't really know. They still don't really know what it means for Jesus to be fulfilling these things. And that tension in the midst of the celebration is something that's brought through when Luke retells then of Jesus' next words of prophecy or prediction. And these are words of sorrow at the end of our passage. Straight away, just after as Jesus speaks to the Pharisees and says, that the stones will cry out, the celebration, the rejoicing. As he approaches Jerusalem, Jesus weeps over the city. And he says, if you, even you, had only known on this day what would bring peace, but now it is hidden from you, from your eyes. The day will come upon you when your enemy will build an embankment around you and encircle you and hem you in on every side. And there's a double edge, or there's a double kind of like face to that prediction there. There is the time in the future where the city would be surrounded by its enemy and it would fall. The siege of Jerusalem would be coming. But also, and perhaps even much more of a sorrow for Jesus, is that from a spiritual point of view, that there would be many in that city that at that time, Jesus is entering into the city and he is the one who would bring peace. He is the Prince of Peace. And yet there would be so many in the city who wouldn't know who he truly was and would not be able to receive that peace and would not be able to accept them. And he weeps over it. He weeps over it. Today, I'm reflecting on that. I guess for me, as I read these passages and as words of prediction, and as Jesus speaks words of truth and of the future, what gets me, what I get from it is actually at the heart of it, at the heart of all these other things that are happening, it's really only Jesus that knows, that truly knows what's going to happen. Jesus knows that as he enters the city and there's all that celebrations happening, he's entering to die. He's entering to go to the cross. And what I'm reminded of, and what gives me pause for just somber reflection, but also just thankfulness and thanksgiving, is that even as Jesus knows all of that, he does it willingly. Even though he knows that as he dies on the cross, there will be many who would still reject him, he does it willingly. He does it because he has the heart of the Father. He has the heart of the Father, that he loves the whole world, and therefore he gives his life for us. And so I pray that that's something that you would also be able to hold on to this week as you face all the uncertainties that you may face, all the circumstances where you may wish you had some kind of crystal ball to know what would happen in the future and have predictions that would happen. Actually, I pray that what you would find in the gospel and what you'll find in the reading today is the one person who knows all these things, and the person that you can trust, the person that you know loves you, and as you accept him as your savior and you're the king, that he would be your savior and your king, and his kingdom would be one that's eternal, and that is one that you could rest your hope in today.